Hi crafty friends, it's Jeannie and I'm back to share with you this really fun rainbow card featuring Pretty Pink Posh's birthday train and Valentine train stamps. These two stamp sets go together. Valentine's train was released last month and then birthday train is in this new release, but they go together, so I'm featuring both of them. And as you can see from my finished product at the beginning, it is a one layer stamped masked card. So it might be a little bit longer, but I feel like I wanted to share the entire steps of this. It's definitely one of those videos that I can't really put into a reel because you kind of miss the steps of the coloring, so a longer video it is. So I started off by sectioning off both of these train tracks. So I just split it into half and then I stamped the train tracks on the bottom portion and then the middle portion, and then I'll be going ahead and stamping all the bits and pieces for my train. I will also be masking everything because I will be ink blending. Masking is one of my favorite techniques that I like to use, mainly because when I started out card making, I couldn't afford the dies that went with it. It just didn't seem like some investment that I wanted to make, especially with coordinating dies, because you only can use it with one stamp set. You can't really do too much else with it. There are techniques for card making to utilize coordinating dies, but I just was a beginner, so I ended up masking a lot to achieve the look that I wanted. Ink blending kind of goes hand in hand with that because ink blending helped me fill up an entire background without using a lot of resources. Distress inks are what I use here, and distress inks were what I used back then as well. I didn't see the point of using my really expensive Copic markers and the ink to color everything up for the background. So ink blending was definitely a cost-effective option for me at that time. And it still is, because a lot of my mini ink pads that I had back 7 years ago or so when I started card making are ones that I still use today. And refills are cheap, and repurchasing a mini ink pad is relatively cheap as well. I stamped all the images and then I stamped them again on Eclipse masking paper. I cut them out, which I know a lot of people don't love fussy cutting, but I usually only fussy cut images that are pretty simple to cut out and it's not too complicated, and all of these aren't that complicated. The only really complicated area is the train tracks, but I'll be coloring them in a dark color, so I didn't really care if I went over it with my inks, and I'll just be coloring right over any inked areas of the train tracks. Once I have everything masked, there's nothing really complicated with this because there's no overlapping pieces. You don't have to worry about what's in front, what's in back. So I add the masking tape and then I just start ink blending, and I wanted to do rainbow colors. So the top is the first part of the rainbow and then the bottom will be the second part of the rainbow spectrum. So as you can see, the train tracks on the middle of the card panel are exposed, and originally I was going to just ink blend and leave a little bit of white so I didn't touch the train tracks, and I realized that at the top I inked up the whole thing. I had to be consistent and I couldn't leave the white marks on the bottom and then no white on top. As I go in, I do ink up, only fading out to white, but then I realized what I did, and then I'll go back and ink up the entire panel that I have masked off. The masking tape here that I'm using is Scrapbook's mint tape, which is the 1-inch version, and it's one of those things that is a staple in my crafty stash because I use it pretty often, and I use it for sectioning off. My Eclipse masking paper I use mainly for images and large images, because I also do use the Post-it full adhesive tapes, and you can actually see that because they have color. Eclipse masking is white, so it's really hard to tell on camera like what's a mask and what isn't. Those are my 3 types of masking tape that I use, and it's my tried and true in my collection. So although I inked up the train tracks area, you'll see that I picked a pretty dark gray color, and that was completely intentional because I didn't want to have to cut out that train track to mask, so I just went ahead and colored right over them. This is a lot of coloring. It was a lot of inking and masking, but I think that this card just turned out so pretty, and it's the perfect card to celebrate Pretty Pink Posh's, I believe it's their 10th birthday, which is a feat in the crafting community because I know that there's a lot of like brick and mortar companies and small companies that are women owned, and it's so much work to put in time and effort for keeping a company up and running. It's a great accomplishment for Pretty Pink Posh, and I really wanted to make a fun, bright card in celebration of that. They are doing a blog hop for this celebration. This card is part of the blog hop, and then in a few days, it will also be the Instagram hop. So there's a lot of inspiration by a ton of different designers. And so I encourage you to stop by and check it all out. I'll have my blog link down below as well as my Instagram handle so you can stop by, and they'll have the links to other people and you can see all the pretty things that the different crafters have made. And I love looking at all the cards that crafters make because everyone has a different style. I have my own style. Another crafter could be more suitable for your style, but it's really fun to see everything. And then also it kind of triggers me to want to try a different technique if it's like something that I normally don't go to and I see someone else do it. I'm like, oh yeah, like I want to do that. For the coloring, it's nothing super special, but I am trying to color in a rainbow gradient according to the ink blending. Like at the beginning of that train, you can see that there's a little pink and then I move on to orange. I really wanted just to go monotone with the colors because I thought that would be fun. There's not too much of an overlap because the colors are kind of pretty much sectioned off very well. If you're new to Copic markers, you don't really have to worry about blending them. I pick colors that are very close together, and usually if you run the marker over each other, it kind of starts blending and it works really well as long as it's not like a super dark blue with a really light purple. Like that won't work, but the same tone of purple and blue, like those will blend together and kind of become a little bit seamless. But for this card, you can tell that there's clear separation because they have the little connector pieces for the train sections, and I'm not even sure if that's correct to use, but I just went ahead and did it. I'm not really familiar with trains, but this looks like it works and it allows enough spacing between all the pieces that I didn't have to stamp too many of these to color it up. My coloring is with my Copic markers. It's my tried and true technique of using 3 markers, a dark, medium, and then a light. I always go in with my darkest for the shadows, and then I'll go in with my second color and blend it out a little bit, leaving a bit of white. And then for my last color, I go all in. And although sometimes when you see my coloring, it doesn't really show the shading or it looks kind of flat, but if you were to color with a solid color, you can definitely see the difference. So the little bit of a darker color just to create that shadow really plays a difference in the coloring. You definitely can color with just one Copic marker if that's what you choose to do. It makes it very easy. There's a lot less thought involved because you don't have to figure out what colors are nearby and what color families blend well together. But for me, this is my technique, and that's kind of how I built my Copic collection as well. I picked colors that were very close in number to each other. So for example, the B00s, right? So I picked B00, B02, and B04, and then like a really darker color is B06. So I picked colors that aren't right next to each other, but they kind of skip. So like for my grays, I have C9, C7, C5, and that's how I kind of built my collection by using the combo of colors. So once all the coloring is done, I picked out my sentiment. This I already had thought about in advance because I knew a lot of my images was going to take up a large portion of my card, and I really didn't want to cover up any of the ink blending. I didn't want to cover up the images themselves, so I went with heat embossing, and I chose to do it in white because I thought black would be too harsh, and I also didn't want to lose the hooray that's stamped right over that train with the stamped image of it. If that makes sense, I think the white just makes it pop a little bit more, but on camera it does look like it's kind of lost there, but in person you really can see it. And that is my card for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!